Item C is our opening ceremony. This meeting is a meeting of the Cuyahoga Falls Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business. It is not a public community meeting, although there are opportunities for public participation. If an individual wishes to address the board regarding a topic found on the meeting agenda, the individual must complete a registration form found inside the attendance notebook and present it to the treasurer. Following the introduction of the topic by the board president, followed by board discussion, the individual will be recognized. If an individual wishes to address the board regarding a topic not found on the meeting agenda, he or she must notify the superintendent and/or board president of the topic no later than 3 business days in advance of the meeting. These individuals may share their comments during the board business portion of the agenda. In both cases, the individual will preface comments by an announcement of his or her name and address limit comments to 3 minutes. All statements should be directed to the board president. No person may address or question board members individually. An unabridged board agenda for this meeting can be found on your electronic device as shown on the screen. And for your convenience, hard copies of the board agenda may be found on the table by the sign-in book over on the library station. The next special meeting of the Cuyahoga Falls Board of Education is July 23rd, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. in the Cuyahoga Falls High School Library. I just wanted to state for everyone in attendance, we will not be having elementary school building discussion that evening. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Cuyahoga Falls Board of Education is August 6, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. in the Cuyahoga Falls High School Library. And now for our Pledge of Allegiance, and welcome Ms. Stokoy.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome. Our vision, Cuyahoga Falls City School District, the hub of our community, committed to a culture of caring. We innovate, we create, we personalize education for all. Our mission, every student, every day, every opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Stokoy. Item D is our presentations and discussion, and I would like to call up Ms. Marjorie Johnson, who is our transportation supervisor.
If I could just maybe set the stage to introduce Ms. Johnson. So this evening, we have 2 things in which we'd like to focus. I'm going to share that responsibility with Ms. Johnson. I've asked her to work on looking at what the boundaries would be for the 3 different schools that we have announced, which is Price, Preston, and Richardson. And so she's going to give you a demonstration of how that happens. It's a very complex process. I got to see it firsthand in her office earlier this week, and I've seen it before. But I want her to share that information with you, and then when she's finished, I'll have a part 2 and talk to you a little bit more specifically about the dividing up of each one of those buildings relative to if we were to close or sell Cheney and move over to one of the elementary buildings. So Ms. Johnson, I'm going to probably tag team her a little bit and maybe interject on some things that I think might be relative to what we have discussed and maybe she's not privy to, just for some clarification. But if you would, and thank you again for all the work you've done on this.
Sure, thank you. Good evening. So whenever we are routing, these considerations always take place, but even more so now when we're talking about possibly closing a school. We always consider how much time will be on the bus. We want to route children to the closest building to their address. So you're not going to want to route a child that lives over in the Preston area over to the Richardson area. It's not efficient. It takes a lot of time. So back to the length of time on the bus, I like to limit, there is no Ohio law on how long you can be on a bus, but I like to limit it, especially for our little ones. I like to keep it somewhere between a half hour to 45 minutes. Extreme cases, an hour, but I don't like to do that. I haven't seen that even here. And the number of drivers that it takes. So obviously, obviously, the more locations you're going to, the more drivers you need, and as you know, finding drivers right now is a big challenge, and any of you that want to learn, I'd be happy to teach you. The students with special needs are always, you know, you have to take that into consideration, and we don't always know that ahead of time. We don't always know that till close to the last minute. That takes a special vehicle sometimes, special harnesses sometimes on the buses, so we have to prepare for all of that, or maybe it's a van. So we have to take into consideration what we need there. We have to take in consideration the capacity of each school building. So even though you may draw a boundary line and it may be the closest to that building may be full. And so then we have to redraw and remove. We try to keep the boundary lines, you know, on the main roads. So you're not going back through the neighborhoods, because it's very easy to send two buses down a main road, one going up one way, one going down the other way. It's not so easy to do that on a small road. And the number of impacted students, of course. So when you're redrawing boundaries, you think that you're just talking about closing one school. It affects all the schools, because then you are shifting everybody. You're shifting those lines. So kids that were in the Preston area now may be going to Price and DeWitt, and the kids that are at DeWitt may be transferred then to Richardson, possibly up to Lincoln. So everybody shifts. Okay, so Dr. Selico asked me if I would give you a little bit of a demonstration on what it actually looks like. So whenever we're doing changes of any type, we create what's called these sandboxes. And because you never want to work in live data, you want to keep what you're doing safe. So we create these sandboxes. So the first step is creating a database. Every time you change a boundary for any school, you have to create a new database. Because once you change a map, if you move that line, it'll erase what you just did. So you have to create a database for each school. So our first step is going to, and you can see there, all the different things we've been working on. So we're going to just go to use Preston as an example.
Marjorie, when you say using Preston as an example, you mean closing Preston?
Yes, we're going to use closing Preston as an example.
Aliens are coming down.
All right, so first I'm going to be bringing up the map of our whole district. Maybe.
Ms. White, can you make sure you're muted?
While we're waiting for that too, I should have prefaced this by saying thank you all for being here tonight. I know this is a lot of interest to all of you, very important to all of you, and so we're thankful that you're here, and we hope to be able to provide you with some clarity and some information tonight. And if we don't, we certainly are available for questions or concerns and comments. So thank you for being here. I should have said that out of the gate, I'm sorry. That's right.
I'm gonna have it reload. That's the other thing this time of year. all of we transportation supervisors and routers are here working late because there's so much to do and sometimes it bogs the system down. Okay. There we go. So here is our city and the surrounding cities. So we pull up a palette. Our palette can do many things. We can edit school boundaries. We can update our city map to reflect new housing developments or changes. We can add new addresses here. We handle all of the bus routing logistics in this palette. So first we're going to pull up the boundary planning. And those are all of the schools, all of the elementary schools that we transport to, including our private schools and our public schools. So I'm going to go in here. Sorry, I don't have much room up here. And I'm going to take out all the private schools, so those are just our schools. So this is what it would look like if we took out Preston. And we have redrawn, and as you can see, we tried to really, stay with the main roads. Again, these are just guesstimates. We have projected how many kindergartners there will be coming in this year, how many projection to come in next year, taking our 5th graders out. So it's a little bit, this far out, it's a little bit of a guessing game. So this is where we can draw, if we wanted to create a new school, a new boundary, we just start drawing like this, go down, wherever we wanted to, and draw a boundary. So that's what it entails. Then, when I click on the Students tab, all those blue dots represent students. So those are all of our elementary students throughout the district. And you can see all the elementary students that are outside of our district that are open enrolls. But within the boundaries, the numbers that you see are just reflective of the boundaries within district, not the open enroll students. So I can go up to the population region and grab a polygon and start going around students to tell me how many students are right in that area. But all of this is really, really time consuming when you change them, and then you're trying to figure out how many kids are in each section. So we may do this and then find out, okay, Silver Lake has too many kids. So then we have to redraw and we have to keep moving. The other thing that we are able to do, and again, it takes time putting them in, but then it saves time in the long run. We can go into what's called Map Viewer. And you see we've created all of our schools over here that have every grade level. So if we wanted to see how many first grade DeWitt students we have, click on there, and there they all are. And you can see that you have DeWitt students in, that's the intra-district kids that are in the other areas. Only here in the green are the actual DeWitt students that live in, that's their home school. And we can keep adding. There's second grade Lincoln students up there. And then we're able to go through and see exactly how many of each grade level is it at each school, which again is a determining factor. And these are just numbers. These are not, we don't know what any given school needs for special education students. Maybe they need an extra classroom. So, I'm just basing off of population numbers. I don't have any of those outside factors. Okay, so that's just a short overview. This system can do a lot and incredible things, but it is very time consuming, and we're adding to it every day and learning more things about it every day.
And maybe one point to emphasize in doing that, when we were looking at it, and I know you mentioned it earlier, but I want to point out, because the question can become, well, you could really draw these lines any way you want. And certainly the answer is yes, but there are so many other factors that we mentioned earlier with the considerations, such as those main thoroughways and main streets. We have railroad tracks to contend with, so it wouldn't make sense to draw lines just anywhere. And that's why I know Ms. Johnson has showed me how she tries to stick to those main roads, so students are not crossing those dangerous areas, and so it just makes sense. So we don't really have the ability to just draw them any way we want. I don't want people to walk away with that impression. And I also would say, I don't want you to squint and look for your street on here and see where you're at, because this is strictly a draft. It's not going to be written in stone. I can assure you there'll be many changes, because we don't know what school it will be. But I don't want you to walk away from this saying, oh, no, my child's gonna go to such and such a school if you find your street. So this is really for demonstration. And you'll see in this next part here, though, that we did get a little bit more specific, but again, not completely written in stone. So I just would like to clarify that. And when we put this on the website, we'll make that certain to people so they know that they're not looking at the final draft, because I know how that could work. So we'll put draft everywhere so they don't panic people more than they need to be.
And to her point, and I explained this to one of the other board members earlier, when you make a boundary that crosses the tracks, that crosses the median of the district, so if you have a boundary like DeWitt goes across, that bus then has to go back and forth. All those things add time. So you try to limit that as much as you can. So if I have a boundary that crosses, as I do a lot with the special needs buses, I try to limit it to 1 or 2 buses. So I have the bulk stay over here, and so I send 1 or 2 across. So you want to limit that as much as you can. It takes a lot more time. As she said, with the tracks, we have to stop not only going, but coming back. So that all adds time to the route. So this is what we have now. These are the boundaries, and they have been that way ever since I have been here. I did not create these original boundaries. This has been here for 10 plus years. Those of you that have been here all your lives, you probably know better than I do. But ever since I've been here, this is what the boundaries have looked like. So this is the current boundary map on the left, and Preston closed on the right, so that you can get a little bit of an idea on how we moved the boundary lines. And again, it does not include the open enrolled students. And your numbers on the left have the capacities at the bottom on what they could hold, and these are based on a 2015 study. Again, that does not include special rooms that we need for various reasons for your special needs students. There's lots of other factors. This is, based on a study from 2015 on what our buildings can hold.
Yes, and I would caution the board on these, I studied the capacities and I looked at our buildings rather closely. They're pretty accurate. I'm a little skeptical of Silver Lake, for example, the capacity that they have there. I'm not showing that we could get that many in there, but they're pretty close. I think that's a tight fit for both Preston and Price. I think the others are pretty pretty close, and Lincoln gets high up there, but I would just say, again, for the reasons that Ms. Johnson stated, we have sensory rooms now, we have specialized classrooms that probably weren't taken into consideration, and the state does not take those rooms into consideration, so what they deem as capacity, I would not necessarily agree with based on the needs of our students here today.
Much like a school bus, we are allowed 3 children per seat. I don't typically do that. I try to stick to 2 per seat, just, for comfort of the kids, and we might be able to put 3 very small kindergartners in a seat, but we don't typically try to do that if we can help it.
And then in this, because the other factor as well for you in routing is that we bus at 1 mile in elementary school, which is well below the state limit.
Yes, the state limit is 2 miles, and
Yes.
we bus anybody that is over 1 mile from their home school.
For elementary.
Yes.
Like in this, you could see that there'd be a lot of additional busing because you've got the tracks going through right there.
Okay. So if we were to close Preston, this goes through the number of students that will be displaced. And this is what I was talking about earlier about moving boundary lines and what it does to the other schools. So Price Elementary would have approximately, again, these are all guesstimates, approximately 105 students displaced to Lincoln. Now that doesn't mean that those spots aren't being taken back up. They would be. They would be taken back up by other students from other schools. Displaced to Lincoln Elementary. Silver Lake Elementary would have 35 students displaced to Lincoln. DeWitt would have 59 students displaced to Richardson and 46 students displaced to Lincoln. And Richardson Elementary would have 37 students displaced to Lincoln. And Lincoln would have no displaced students. So that school holds more students. So again, you have to keep that into consideration when a school has a capacity. They may not have that many kids there, but they can hold more. So we could put more there if we needed to. It's all a puzzle.
And then, just to add, so it's 282 that are displaced by closing Preston, which has 226 kids that then get displaced because we're closing it. So then the total would be 508. Just, yeah.
Yeah.
And then on this, and in each one of these, if you do the math, I was looking at them and I said, something doesn't add up here. If you try to add up the numbers on the left and add up the numbers on the right, I will tell you they don't add up, and the reason for that is because you don't take into account open enrolled students, because on the left is our current enrollment, which includes all students, whereas the ones on the right are just including Cuyahoga Falls students. So that's why there will be a discrepancy in each set of those numbers. So if you think our math is wrong, it's intentional. It's not our math.
So on this next one, you see if we were to close Price, the current map, and then what it would look like, or one scenario. Like I said, we these are by no means written in stone. So you can see 2 of the schools, DeWitt and Lincoln, would be crossing the tracks. So those routes would take longer because of that. And again, the number of displaced students, if we were to close Price, Silver Lake would have 29 students displaced to DeWitt and 42 displaced to Lincoln. Lincoln would have 54 displaced to Richardson. DeWitt would have 155 displaced to Richardson, and Richardson and Preston would have no displaced students.
And then, so just, that's 280 plus the 268 at Price, so then that totals out to 548 total.
Okay, and if we were closing Richardson, Again, we have one school that would cross over, but this one has a pretty big shift and some pretty big numbers in some of the schools. We most likely have to do more figuring here.
Price is over capacity.
Yeah,
For example.
price is over capacity.
Well over capacity.
And some of your, like Lincoln's getting up there. Again, these are not including open enrolled and any other sensory rooms, things like that. So, it's getting, when those numbers get high like that, then you have to think about redrawing, refiguring, moving some students to another school. So Lincoln Elementary would have 147 displaced to Silver Lake. Silver Lake would have 40 displaced to Preston and 42 displaced to Price. DeWitt would have 43 displaced to Lincoln. Price would have 52 displaced to Preston. And Preston would have 46 displaced to Price.
And then that's the 370 plus the 270 students at Richardson, so that's 640.
Again, you're drawing around students, and the other thing, you're in the middle of a summer when we haven't rolled all the students. There's a lot of things that enter into it. We haven't rolled all the kids yet, so your numbers are going to be off just a little bit.
And it certainly doesn't account for students that move in or
Right.
move out.
Right.
So this is a projection.
Okay.
And to clarify, this is not including any open enrollment,
It
correct?
does not.
Thank you.
Any questions or anything that Ms. Johnson can answer before she sits down?
That's the question.
Sure.
If, with the closing of the school, if a student is, say at DeWitt, is within that 1 mile, so wouldn't technically qualify for busing, but crosses the train tracks, would they be bused because of the walking over the train tracks?
Yes.
Okay.
I do that. I do that for any student in our district, no matter how old they are. I don't want kids crossing the tracks, and I deem that dangerous. So I don't have kids walking across there at all.
Okay.
Thank you very
Can
much for.
I ask another question? Sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I think it's actually for you, Dr. Salvo. So based on the numbers, and I saw how they had the capacity to say this is how second graders and this is how many third graders. Is that how you guys kind of figure out how many classrooms, or is there something else that you guys use?
That is, excuse me, my next concern, because, sorry, this is like an aggregate, right? This is the whole number.
Sorry.
I don't know what happened. I just drank water, went down the wrong area there. Yeah, I mean, certainly one of my concerns that, Margie and I discussed is that, like, let's say the numbers work, right? All the totals work, but then we end up with like an odd number when you end up with those, sections where it's not enough for two, too big for one, and you can end up, with different amounts of sections. Now, we make those things work, but that will require more play with them, with the lines to make them as best you can, and then it's up to us to just make some decisions, about where we place students or transportation, and we might have some more challenges. So looking at the whole number doesn't solve the problem. You do have to go deeper. We just haven't gone that far yet, but just in her example of grade levels. I am a little concerned when we get to that point, concerned about making it so it's nice and neat, but it's, not, most likely not going to be nice and neat, so we just have to figure out those challenges.
You may have a huge fourth grade or a huge fifth grade,
Yeah.
and you don't know that yet. So And then you may not have any first graders, you know, so it's a balancing.
I appreciate the incredible amount of data that you're able to get from this program. I didn't realize all the things that you could do with that, so that's neat to know. And I can't imagine trying to do this with just paper and pencil and not having the computer support.
Yeah, I
Because
remember when.
there's so much information. There's so much information that you can get from TransFinder that I didn't realize that you could get, and I'm glad we're not doing paper and pencil.
Me too, me too.
It's less guessing and more accurate data.
Anybody else?
I don't have any questions, but I appreciate what you did.
Yes, thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much.
you
I
so
know that's a
much.
lot.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Okay, part two, thank you, Ms. Johnson, appreciate
Thank
it. So I apologize to those of you in the audience, I am not going to have a visual, and the reason is, what I'm about to show the board members are floor plans. And for security purposes, we're highly discouraged by folks, and I don't even know the legality of just putting out floor plans for safety of our students and staff. So I appreciate you understanding that. You'll hear our dialogue, and that they'll be referencing some floor plans here. It's not intentional, it's just for safety. So I believe, so what I gave you are two things. One, so if you would like to draw and play, I gave you copies that are not written on, and if you would like to, you know, take a stab at other ideas, you have that opportunity. And then what I did, so what's in front of me here is, this is related to the notion if we were going to repurpose, so people think it's semantics about closing and repurposing, and it can be to some extent, but what we are really looking to do is, in the suggestion that I offered to the board for their consideration, is to keep all 6 of our buildings open, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll be elementary. One would be repurposed to house preschool and an alternative school for high school students. So, and let me tell you I'll tell you a little bit more about that. So that's currently at the Chenae Learning Center. So that program actually exists. Those two programs coexist in Chenae Learning Center right now. I've been there numerous times. It functions very well. Students are separated. Preschool's in one wing. There's a whole separate entrance for both groups of students. Very isolated. Frankly, the high school students, there are some times in which they interact and read stories to the little ones, and it's a nice interaction between the students. But what I was suggesting was that perhaps we look at, Chenae is in, it's not in disrepair by any means, because our preschool wing particularly is nice. We invested in that prior to my arrival in the district. And so it looks and functions well, but because we are investing in our buildings and upgrading in some of them, I thought that we could explore selling Chenae, and I do believe we'll have some interest there. It does need, like I said, some work. The design, how many of you have seen Chenae, the building Chenae? Okay, so we have this roof that does one of these, if you've seen it, and it's very, sorry to the architect who designed it, but it poses a lot of problems with roofing and leaks, etc. So my suggestion would be that we would sell that property and then take those two programs and relocate them in one of the 3 elementaries you see today. The reason we have arrived at these 3 elementaries is because a number of our students in the preschool are students with disabilities, and some of them have mobility issues, and so schools with multiple floors are not really conducive to those students. And if we are going to consider that, then we would need to look at a 1-story building, hence the 3 that you see here this evening. So that's just one piece of it. So with that in mind, what I did is I took each one of those floor plans, and I want the board to see different ways in which we could divide those buildings, so we are providing for what I just described to you. Separate entrance for our preschoolers, a division where that division would be, so it's safe and blocked off from the other group of students. But in doing so, I had to look at one, and I didn't get this far into it, I will be honest, but egress and things that the fire department would look at, making sure that there's enough exits, entrances. I looked at restrooms, because we have adult restrooms and then we have student restrooms, so there's, on these maps, they'll see that bit of information. And then each one of the spaces needs about 10 classrooms. I think Chenae could do with less. They have 6 full-time and 4 part-time classrooms in use right now, but that doesn't count also their office area and things like that. So I think it's safe to say 10. I think it's safe to say 10 for preschool, around that number. Currently we have 4 classrooms for our preschool. We would like to expand that eventually, but also with that comes, we need rooms for related services such as occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech, psychology services, a sensory room. So all of those things do require more space for preschool. It's not just the 4 classrooms. So we're keeping those things in mind and looking at all of those areas. So what I did was I took a stab at, and what you'll see, if you just look, we'll just take, what's first? Price. Price is on my first list. I don't know if it's on yours. I'm sorry, mine got shuffled. So we'll look at price. What I did, so for those of you who are looking, it's like a letter T, but like a little bit of a short T. So there's a little part here and a longer hallway, and it goes across. So what I would suggest, and what we run into with the price situation is adult restrooms would be an issue. If you look at my 2 green lines, there's 2 options that I kind of came up with there. That the one to the, I guess the north, would be one that would afford us a couple more classrooms. So that would give us 10 classrooms for preschool, 6 offices and a gym, and so I listed it off to the side there, how many each area, that they could see how many classrooms would be there. In addition, they would have access to the gym. There's no cafeteria at Price. They have dual purpose gym and cafeteria, so neither one would have a cafeteria as it is. Shanae would have 12 classrooms in this. Now, you also could bump that line down, so I could have shown you 10 different lines, but I didn't think, I know you're all very astute and can figure out that we can manipulate that line a little bit. If you just move it down, you'll get 2 more classrooms, etc. So the challenge for Price, in my opinion, might be the staff bathroom. However, what you're going to see, because you won't see it in other drawings, is that right now, I just learned at Shanae that they badge in. So if an adult needs to use a restroom, they badge into the other side and use it appropriately. All of our staff is background checked and are all certified folks, and so I don't have a concern with safety relative to the in and out. So that is, that then, the concern there, and I think one of the things I would have to speak with Mr. Paulia, who's the principal at the high school program, is that there's no large space for them. So cafeteria, they do eat there, so they currently use the gym as a cafeteria, so that might be a challenge. That would be a challenge in all 3 of them. Well, 2 of the 3, I believe. Probably all 3, actually, if I look at it, and you'll see that when I get to Richardson, because Richardson was tricky.
Dr. Selico?
Yes.
Do they serve a meal?
They do, they have, Bill brings them lunches like brown bag. I don't think they do hot lunches there, right? It's just all brown bag.
Okay.
Can you clarify what the yellow highlighting
Yes.
is?
Yellow are the restrooms, the dual restrooms for children. The blue are restrooms for adults.
Okay, thank you.
So the pre-K entrance at Price would be your main entrance that's there now. The Shanae students would enter from the back end of that hallway and come in. So again, separate entrances. Your door, where you see my green line, is where we would install a door as the division. Any questions on that one before I move on? Okay, next I have Preston. So Preston is also like a T. These buildings are quite similar, if some of you are familiar with one or both. And I should say this, because I did this in all 3 models. It doesn't, you could flip the models in which, so in other words, you could flip in Preston's a perfect example of switching pre-K with Shanae. I'm a little selfish in that I like the notion of our preschool to have our parents come in the main entrance with an office and the setup that it is as a school. Mr. Paulia is a little bit more flexible in what his programming is different. I know he's been great to work with and flexible, and I don't think that he'd be so bothered as I would be about having the office and where parents can come in, et cetera, and set up like a school. So in all 3 of these models, I preserve the office for the preschool. So they come in the main Preston office. When you go to the left, you have well, the library is across from it, then you head that, and then you come to this hallway here. There's just a storage on the end. But what I would suggest is dividing that sort of in half, and so you wouldn't have access going, oh my goodness, this way, which is what direction? South? I don't know, don't ask. North. Okay. They all know, I have no sense of direction, so does my team, so none of them are surprised that I don't know north, south. I just say left and right, don't ever give me
You
north,
said
south.
north to start with. Thank you.
Every once in a while, I'm getting one right. So, yes, heading that way, so heading to the left, if you're coming down Preston and you're going this way and you go to the left, you can see there, I'm trying to illustrate for the people in the audience. But this one affords, there is no bathroom, adult bathroom in actually, any way you would slice this one, there would be no adult bathroom, because in that, and Miss Principal Brown, you're here today, but according to my drawing, there's no adult restroom in that one whole wing. Where your lounge is,
It's not designated just adults, all the restrooms at Preston are adult-sized.
yeah, but
So
you don't
some
have a
buildings-
private restroom for adults, right? Yeah, in that hallway.
Right.
So that would require people to come over, but again, same as price, similar challenge. And then you could see, so in this model in Preston, our students, preschool students would have access to the gym. And they do need a large motor space. So our preschoolers need special playground equipment. They also need a place for gross motor. And that's why we really need to preserve a gymnasium for them.
Dr. Silico?
Yes.
On this, the one that you just gave us, you have the restrooms down here marked blue. Those are in the classroom,
Yes, they are.
so those would be designated as an adult bathroom?
No, they wouldn't. They're just, I'm just showing you where
Oh, 'cause they're-
bathrooms are.
Okay, because
In
they're
general.
blue, that's why I asked.
Yeah, Mr. Woodard did this, he was just showing me where the odd ones were, so
Okay.
thank you, yeah. I just asked him to show me where all the various ones are. You're right, there are two in the 2 kindergarten rooms, which are great for preschool, and I took that into consideration, but I still went the other way. But what I just described to you, you could flip this model, you just wouldn't have the office then, and that would be offered to the Shanae, and I would probably make that whole hallway for, pretty much for preschool. But then you would not have access to the gym, and that was my concern. And then Shanae entrance would be off the parking lot there, at the end of the hallway. Just any notes, let me see, no large space for Shanae, as I mentioned, the adult restroom, and you can flip it. So, and then the preschool would have 11 classrooms, the library, the gym, and 4 to 5 offices, whereas Shanae would have 12 classrooms, so both ample space. Okay? How am I doing on my description? Are you all following along? Okay.
I'm
If you were
sorry,
me, I'd be lost. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, right, left, all that, so.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes.
too? The Schnee entrance will be here, this
Yes.
doesn't have the markings on these ones, don't have it marked off. The ones that you just gave us, don't have the green lines on them.
The Preston, yeah, it does. Well, I don't know.
There's
Mine
just
doesn't.
one
Just
line,
one.
Yeah, it's like,
right.
Oh, mine doesn't
kind of-
have a line on it.
Are you looking at the, I gave you a blank one and then one with writing.
That's a blank one.
Oh,
It's
thank you so
behind.
much.
So I thought you could all take a stab and scribble on it.
Yeah, look at those ones.
All right, thank you.
There's 3 and 3.
Okay, Richardson, are we prepared for this? I would say this is the most complicated. I could have drawn many lines, as I kind of did. Actually, I did put 4 in there. I probably could have drawn more.
Because it's eye-shaped.
It is eye-shaped. It is. That is right. So it's a bigger building and allows us more space than we would need. Not a ton more, so that's not an obstacle really, but I came up with various drawings. So the challenge at Richardson is that you have a gymnasium with 2 doors that have entrances, right? And then you have a cafeteria with the same thing, 2 doors. You have a library with 2 doors. So why that's relevant is when you go to split it, you might have a door on one side of your split, if you're following me, where their door would block off, and then someone could go in here and walk around, kind of a thing. And you could lock it, of course, I suppose, but I don't know how the fire marshals would like that idea too much. So what I tried to do was take that into consideration and block it off either before the gym or the library or the cafeteria to have discrete closures. But this one does pose a problem. Really, it's coming in, the preschool entrance, I have you coming in off of the main. So again, the main where it allows us to maintain the offices. Then you could block it off before you get to the gym, which again, I don't recommend because we need the gross motor. So then that brings you back down to the end of the gym where you could split it. You can even go 1 classroom in, you can go another classroom in, depending on how many classrooms you would like to give. But the one that I recommend would split off your library. We would have the library, and that would allow Shanae 12 classrooms and 2 offices. Preschool would have a library, cafeteria, gym, 12 classrooms and 6 offices. So more than enough. But again, the challenges being those splits, and then no large space for Shanae. But again, this challenges really exist on all 3 of the buildings. So this one's just a little trickier. Restrooms are the best at Richardson in terms of adult and student. They're accommodated in both settings.
Can I ask another question?
Yes, of course.
How many, do you need parking spaces for Sinead? Do they have student drivers there?
Not many.
Okay.
Yeah, there's not a lot. Parking's fine in all of the areas. That's not an issue or concern. And access for preschool buses in and out, we're fine on all the schools. I mean, Richardson is tricky, the Acme thing that's going on over there. It's very interesting. Those of you who are Richardson parents.
Yeah.
When I first arrived in the district, I'm like, this is her procedure. It's very strange to me. I mean, but it works. But when I go there, I go to Acme and grab my grapes, and then I go to visit Richardson.
Acme is very accommodating because they get lots of shoppers.
I know. I've said that, I've talked to them there. And actually, who am I kidding? It's not grapes, it's usually chocolate or donut. If I'm being truthful. Yeah. So you all know that's true. That's why you're giggling, my team over here, Mr. Support. So anything else that I can answer, or thoughts?
Not on that, no,
Okay.
not from me.
Doc?
Thank
Doc-
you.
Dr.
Yes.
C, real
Yes.
quick. Can you remember, what was the reasoning for the pre-K entrance on Preston for the offices?
Yes, the pre-K entrance there, yes.
Yeah, it was for the office space
Yeah, if you go to the right, and also the gym.
and for the gym? Okay.
So in all 3 of these, you have the preschool going into the main, what would be right now the main entrance of this building.
Yes, and having access to the gym.
No.
I'm trying to think, I mean, I know Richardson and Price, there's not crossovers with the Shanae entrances on any of these with playgrounds or anything like that for the students? I know Richardson's there isn't, and I believe Preston there's not either.
I don't think so. I mean, I've always, they coexist now nicely, and it works, and I don't think it would be any different in how we have it now. We also are going to be putting in, with some luck, a preschool playground, so we can, we might be able to, and I don't know every single ounce of every aspect of the 3 sites, but we have some control over where we place that playground as well, so.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more question too? In thinking about like the cafeteria that you would need for the Shanae students, are in any of these rooms, in the schools, like a teacher lounge or something like that could accommodate, and how many students are at Shanae?
So right now, there's only 50.
Okay.
There's been as many as that I'm aware of as like 90, 95,
Okay.
maybe 90.
So that probably wouldn't work anyway.
No, but they also, those students sometimes are in and out. They're not all there all day, every day. And they're smaller class sizes, so, I mean, they could eat in classrooms. We could set up, in my previous life, we set up a classroom for our online students, and we made it a little lounge area for the students to eat in. And it was a classroom, but we made it nice. Made it like a cafeteria setting. It's not ideal, but it definitely could be done.
Right, that brings us to board discussion. I know that we've just gotten a lot more information to go over, along with the presentation by Dr. Selleck at our last meeting as well. So, wanted to open it up for board discussion on thoughts, on where you're at. I know we were to the 3 buildings at our last meeting with the transportation data, and I know the blueprints and everything. I just wanted to open up for thoughts and discussions on where everyone is at right now in their process.
Well, looking at, sorry, I'll go first.
Sure.
Looking at just the transportation data alone and the number of displaced students, I think Mr. Gomez, you were pointing it out while the presentation was on. So if Preston closes, there will be 282 students displaced amongst 4 other schools, plus then the Preston population, so that's 508. Price, you'll have, obviously the Price current population would be displaced to other schools, and then 280 additional students over 4 schools, so that's a total of 548. And then Richardson, which now has 270 students, they would be displaced, and then over 5 schools, 370 students would be displaced, so that would be a total of 640. So speaking of just displaced students, Preston is 508, Price is 548, and Richardson is 640. I was a little bit confused about the next closest school data. And then I guess it was an average next closest school, and then what the furthest distance would be. But it looks like the average, if you close Preston, the average next closest school is 0.67 miles. Price is just over a mile, and Richardson is 0.74 miles. So that probably makes a difference with transportation routes, because you wouldn't be, if you have a school that's closer to the next closer schools, then you wouldn't have as much transportation time. I was confused about, and I'm glad that Ms. Johnson talked about how they look at the numbers and the different classes, because originally when we were looking at how many rooms were available, like currently, and I know that would change because we'd be pulling students, redrawing boundaries, but like it looked like Price didn't have any available rooms, but like Preston and Richardson would have available rooms. How would you kind of figure that? I know these are just like raw numbers, like this is how many students would be at that building, but I wasn't sure.
And so
How
probably
that
for the
would-
benefit of people in the room that may not have heard the last presentation, and Ms. Johnson alluded to it, Lincoln has a lot of, and I'm gonna go back in my memory, about 8 classrooms that are available, so they have a lot of space, whereas Price, for instance, doesn't have any space, they're at capacity. DeWitt had like maybe 1 or 2 at the most, Silver Lake had 2, Preston has a few, I think 4 available. So that makes a difference as well, and that's why when you're looking at your capacities, like, that's why some people are untouched, like Lincoln doesn't have to move anyone because they have so much room, we don't have to take students out of there. So that also, does that address kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah.
So those buildings could absorb more, which is why they may in some of those instances have less movement.
And then I saw in some of the, like, the-
Richardson too, I'm so sorry, because I know we have Richardson people here this evening, they also have 4 rooms available, I'm sorry.
Right, and
yeah,
there's-
4 rooms, and the Price had 0, and then it said Preston had 3 to 4 rooms available. So when we're looking at where students are going to go, the transportation presentation didn't specifically look at that, but with the rooms that are available and the number that we know needs to go to each building to reroute, have we looked at if there's actually a classroom available for the students? I know the number-wise would fit in their maximum capacity.
No, we're still at that high level.
Okay.
But my assumption would be, based on the numbers that she had, again, it's gonna depend when you get down to the grade levels, because again, if I need 5 fifth grades, but only 1 first grade, it's weird, but I think overall, it should be pretty close to those overall numbers. Just do a divisor of 22, 24, 25 in a classroom, or whatever. And that'll give you how many classrooms you need.
I'm also concerned, like on the closing of Richardson, where we have students going right now. Price has a capacity of 293 and it's putting 404 students. With the boundaries that are available, and obviously that doesn't work. So I know to us, the naked eye would be, oh, well then you withdraw, you redraw Price and you put some of them at Silver Lake, and then you make Preston larger and you put a few of them over there. But as Ms. Johnson explained, it's not that simple, it's not that
She looked
easy,
at that.
and we are well over capacity of what would need to go.
Yeah, she had said to
There.
me that Richardson would be the biggest challenge because of where it's situated in the city. It's kind of up there. And that a lot of those students would need to be bused elsewhere, and it has a push effect, but I know
Because
she
of
had
1
some
mile.
concerns.
Is the
related to it.
capacity like a fire code capacity, or what, just the build, like
Yeah,
if
it's
you?
most likely associated with that.
Well, I think when you think that Price doesn't have classrooms available, if you're gonna pack it that full, I just don't think it's gonna work feasibly. Cause if you need even one more classroom and you know you don't have it, it's not gonna work.
Well, there's 0 available classrooms at Price currently.
Yeah, yeah.
Mr. Harris, do you have any?
No,
Thoughts?
I mean, I'm just curious, I know Ms. Johnson mentioned, the increase in cost of transporting over the tracks. I'm curious, and I know we probably have this with all the data we've been presented with, but what that would look like, what is that increase? Is it gonna be a
So I
significant?
think she said increase in time.
Oh,
I think you
increase
said
in
cost,
time.
yeah.
Oh, I thought she was
Increase
talking
in
about
time.
money. Okay, increase in
No,
time, okay.
Because of the opening and the closing of the doors, they gotta stop at the stops. both
Right,
ways.
right, okay,
Double
okay.
stop.
And then,
Just and to your point, remember Ms. Doikoi assumes in her financial piece of that we will incur additional costs in transportation.
Yeah,
So
okay.
she assumes that in the
Okay.
financial piece
With-
already,
okay, okay.
with whatever we do.
Right, right. And then, just these blueprints here were super helpful because, I'm familiar with the buildings, but not as familiar with the buildings. So seeing these restrooms and stuff and being able to visualize this and lay this out, at least in my head here, will give me a better idea of how we're going to, or how we could at least chop this up. So I at least do really appreciate that. And I do want to, have a little bit more of a closer look at all of this, so. But no, yeah, I'm sorry, I was a little confused on that transportation piece there with the track, so I was just wanting some clarification.
Yeah, like as Mr. Gomez says, there will be an increase in cost, and
Right.
if you recall last time, those that weren't here, it will result in potentially more drivers, more buses
Yeah.
themselves, the fleets, and then, that'll, the cost. So we just have to be mindful also of the number of routes that we would be adding, which is why I think Ms. Johnson was, she had that on there as a consideration, because, the more students you have to transport, obviously the more buses and more routes you're gonna have.
Absolutely, absolutely.
From my perspective, I think a few things. One, I think it's going to be disruptive wherever we go. One of the things people have been saying is that certain schools are closer than other schools, so I put that to the test this weekend. And I drove around and I measured distances. And it's actually surprising. So, for example, just using ones that are on the up for consideration, Richardson to DeWitt is 1.6 miles, but Preston to Price is 1.5 miles. So, in terms of distance between those schools that are in consideration right now, it's actually pretty much equal distances between next closest school. So, that's one of the things I did this weekend, because people were saying that the schools on the east side were closer, and as somebody that grew up on the east side, I was like, I don't know, Price always felt so far from where I lived 1 block from Preston, so I wanted to put that to the test. So it was interesting that they're actually very similarly distanced. So it's definitely going to be a hardship no matter what, no matter which side of town it is. And then I think one of the other things that is important to note is, as you look at the map of the current boundaries, is that Price is our only building that's close to its capacity. So, one, if you close price, it's a lot of students to move, and they won't all fit super neatly on the east side, because you'll hit capacity pretty easily, as we saw. And then, if you close Preston, you can't absorb those students just into Price or DeWitt, and they won't fit. So I think Ms. Johnson showed pretty thoroughly the unfortunate realities of how that reverberates. So that brings me to what I think is an important deciding factor, which is trying to minimize the impact on families. So when you look at right now, and I know these are drafts, but if Richardson's going to impact 640 families, 370 outside the Richardson neighborhood, plus the 270 inside the neighborhood, whereas Preston and Price would impact 508 and 548, I think for me, I would rule out Richardson because it's going to have a much greater impact on our community as a whole. And then I would want to go forward talking about Preston and Price, where they're much closer in number in terms of how many families they're going to impact. Not that I'm excited to impact 508 or 548 possible families by any means, but those are much smaller numbers, and I think at this point I'd rather go with options that impact less families than more families, if that's a possibility. So that's kind of where I'm at tonight. When we're looking at one option that's going to impact over 100 more families, I would want to rule that option out.
Mr. Gomez, and also with that, the students wouldn't be displaced to one or two schools, that's across
All
five
the
schools.
schools.
Yeah, all the schools, so you'd be moving across, less people would be going to the same school, it'd be across 5 schools, which I think is an important thing to note too.
And not to criticize Ms. Johnson, who is phenomenal, and we're very lucky to have. But I think then by focusing on 2 buildings, we can try to look at opportunities to try to even lessen the impact more. Are there, corners that we can soften, areas that we can maybe see where we can move from a draft as we get to more finalized options for perhaps those 2 possibilities where we get even smaller numbers of impacted families. I think that's easier to do with less options. So as I look at what's been presented thus far, and especially with what's been presented tonight, that's where I would be at with options that impact as few people as possible.
And that's where I am too. It's, I think, would be Price or Preston. So I'm there too.
Thank you, Ms. White.
And I just know Ms. White went to Price and I went to Preston, so it's not
Yeah.
for lack of love of those buildings.
Yeah, I would
I
agree,
know.
Mr. Gomez, that obviously we are very sensitive to the fact that this is affecting a lot of students in our district and families in our district. And just with data alone, looking at how many students and families are affected, Richardson affects the most, along with the fact that the numbers, right now, the way that the boundaries are drawn with closing Richardson do not work for capacity either. And also looking at relocating a preschool in Schnee, the way that that is cut off, as Dr. Selico mentioned, is not the most conducive at Richardson either. So for all those reasons, along with looking towards the future and it not going to be maybe the 5 of us sitting up here making the decision of new elementaries in the future, we also know that Richardson is a site that's large enough to put a new elementary school. So, and we are keeping all 6 of those. So I guess that was something before that was discussed that isn't necessarily affecting this decision right now. But I I would agree that Preston and Price, and if we can get down to 2 this evening, so that we can start, as Mr. Gomez said, you know, looking at those boundary lines for Ms. Johnson better, and even classrooms with Dr. Selico, what we need for the grades closer, I think would be a good decision. Thoughts on that?
No, I would agree with what Mr. Gomez said. It makes the most sense. We obviously want to impact the least amount of folks as possible, so I would be in agreement with that.
Are you in agreement?
Oh, I also am in agreement. It's, you know, it's just looking at the numbers from displacement, and then also where the school is located in the city. While Preston and Price aren't as close together as what people think that they are, I think where where Richardson is located in the city makes a difference for me too.
Is when you look at the corner staples of the city
Yes.
with our community. I would agree with that.
And you have a divided heart because you were a Richardson kid, but your kids went to Preston.
I was a Richardson ruffian back in the 80s, 1900s.
It is. I would say between the 5 of us as board members, you know, as I've spoken and been in contact with a lot of families over the past couple months, you know, we have former students on the board that were Black Tigers. I think all 5 of us either went to school here or had students that have gone or are still in school in this district, taught, or up and coming little Black Tigers. So we are all very invested in this community and have been, and none of this is easy for us, and we know it's not easy for the community, so we appreciate everyone's involvement. We appreciate the emails. We do. We appreciate everyone that reaches out. It means a lot to know that so many people are invested in the education of our students.
And then, next steps, I know one of the commitments we made is, once we narrowed it down, that we would have meetings in those buildings for the community, because we want, once we have, kind of where we're headed, we wanted to then go out to those neighborhoods to make it as easy as possible for the people in those neighborhoods to be able to talk to us. Not for them to have to come to us, but for us to come to them. So I think if we're narrowing it down to 2, then we could try to work to see sometimes when we could schedule a meeting at Preston and then at Price as well.
I would agree, if we could get that for some time. I know school is coming right around the corner with school being back in session. Summer goes by very fast, and engaging those families once school is back in session might be the best option, but we can definitely look at dates. I don't know if we want to do that tonight or put that on as an agenda item for our first meeting in August to decide that, or if for you, Dr. Selico, we need to be sensitive to the fact that school's opening and that you all have a lot going on too. So I'm going to make sure that it's a schedule that works for everyone, so everyone can be there to engage in the community.
I think we could just work to try to schedule 2 meetings for sometime in late August. Is that what you?
I think so. I mean, we're on the 6th, already scheduled 6th and 20th. Are those our
Yeah.
2 meeting dates?
So once school's back in, because kids come back on the 18th and the 18th, 19th, 20th for kindergarten.
I also would like to, whether it's the invitation of combined with, you know, we want to go to them at Preston and Price and talk to them, but at some point, engaging the community, because we know they're not the only students that are going to be affected by this. It's going to be families that are displaced or moved from their home school to a new school as well. So I just want to make sure that we're also inviting and engaging those parents as well. And however we're doing that, I just want to make sure they have that opportunity
Yeah,
as well.
and hopefully that gives over a month, so hopefully we'll have something more honed in by then.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anything else on that? Okay. Thank you. And thank you, everyone that's here. You can continue to stay for the rest of the board meeting. You don't have to. We won't think it's rude that you get up and leave it's not boring to us, but we know it may be boring to you, but you're more than welcome to stay for the whole meeting. Thank you. Okay, brings us.
Thank you all.
Do I take 5 minutes?
There were anyone that wanted to speak? No one turned in late? Okay.
Christine, behind you. Alan's here. He started talking to Ryan. I was like, Christine, I'll handle Alan.
Could we take like just a minute?
Do you need a minute? Do you need a minute?
Yeah, can I have a minute?
Can we have Ms. Schaefer and stuff, we can have a brief recess? Yeah, because we're all in agreement.
I'd like to take a short recess at 6:43 p.m. We'll convene at 6:50. 7 minutes. Thank you.
appreciated every minute of it.
6:50 PM, we are back in session. Thank you. Our next item is item E, Treasurer's CFO's consent agenda. Ms. Stillboy.
Thank you. I'd like to recommend the Board of Education approve all items listed in the treasurer's consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
There are a few things. The first one is, so, it's been a stressful month for me. And so, especially, the day of the meeting whenever it was at the end of June to close, because lots of things were happening. And so, I think the paper that I printed for you guys had the wrong amounts for the advances. What was attached was correct, but I think what I handed, so just to cover my bases, just to make sure, because I don't really know what was what then. So we're just gonna go ahead and, it was just, there was one line missing from an advance to one of the grants. So nothing like huge or anything, but just for audit purposes to cover my bases, I'm just gonna have you guys approve that, like, cemented, that yes, you knew what you were approving. And then following that is the return of those advances back to the general fund. And then we have our permanent appropriations for this next fiscal year, fiscal 26 now, and our change funds for athletics and food service to start the year off.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
And then we're gonna get a more detailed presentation on permanent appropriations next meeting, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Stillboy, if you could please call the roll. Thank you.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye. And item F, Treasurer CFO's business, Ms. Stillboy.
Thank you. I'd like to recommend the Board of Education approve the June 2025 investment schedule and monthly spending report.
So moved.
Second.
We'll look at the interest and we can look at that for, this was obviously the closeout of the fiscal year. We did a little bit better than we did in May, which I believe, looking back, was our lowest month all year. But, you know, as I've mentioned many times before, our cash flow is down just due to construction, you know, getting towards the tail end here. So we finished the year with almost 3.3 million. Now the majority of that is in the construction funds. So it looks like 2 million-ish, 2.5, not 2.5, 2.3, 2.4. So in the construction fund, so that's some of that split between local, state, and then obviously our LFI there. So not bad, but we are not going to see what we've seen, you know, the last few years, just because of our financial situation in the general fund and not having as much money to invest in our general account at Red Tree, and then obviously the construction fund balances are certainly going way down. As a matter of fact, one of the LFI accounts, you may have noticed, I think it had like $4 in it at the end of June. And then they closed that out like in the beginning of July and sent me like whatever interest and stuff was remaining. So that account will no longer be on here. And then the capitalized interest, as you know, we closed that one out as well. So there'll be a few less accounts going forward. We can look at athletics. I'll just kind of give you guys the real quick, since it's the year end. So athletics ended up about, I mean, it was a little under what they were last year, but it's kind of now that we're in the swing of the accounts are figured out, the fundraising has been moved kind of to the boosters and out of these accounts. We'll get a better picture of actual athletics. So they're gonna run right around there. As you can see, they've been doing that for the past few months. They're gonna run right around 5,000 most likely, except for the beginning of the year, because your big revenue is football gate sales and stuff. But then obviously in the spring, we do not have many, if at all, ticketed sports that we're receiving revenue for. Those are heavier in the fall and the winter. So this is typically what you'll see. But again, we don't have all those other activity expenditure-wise coming out of this anymore either, is what we did. Food service, just because that is a discussion item later, I know. So I will preface this with, the fact that, so they ended with about 230,000, but due to many of these, federal government delays, some of our reimbursement for the end of the school year, actually, I still don't have it, in July. They're supposed to be processing them this month, what normally would have come, so, I don't know exactly how much that is. I'd have to look, but you can still see that even if it was like for the typical, if it was for the month of May and, whatever, we normally get maybe 150-ish, there. They're still under, about 300,000 or so from what they were, the year before, maybe 300. So it certainly is, a dwindling balance, there, and I'm sure we'll discuss some of that more later, but I just wanted to point that out and to make a note that there is an outstanding payment due to us, for that, so we should see that hopefully soon, but I haven't seen the other ones yet for my other federal grants, so. And then the general fund, I think if I remember, I think we said, I'm gonna pull it up because in the May forecast, we had forecasted ending balance of about 6.3. So we ended at about 5.4, and some of the reasons for that are just the timing of payments. So if you remember, like, our big technology orders, we pushed that up to this year. In May, I didn't anticipate us like receiving everything, getting the invoice, and cutting the check before June 30th. I figured it'd be post-July. Well, we were able to do that. So some of those things, it's really going to be just kind of that move around. There'll be less expenditures than next year, and we should end up in the same. So there were some big, we made another payment for the Preston Price project right before that. So some of those payments just crossed when I anticipated we'd actually physically cut the check on those. But they were all within those 2 years. There was a projection for all those costs anyway. So that's where we ended the year, which is right about where we thought we would be going into that. And then if you remember, we were only looking at ending this upcoming fiscal year per the May forecast at about $1 million would be our ending balance. The budget is a lot tighter this year. You probably see even in the appropriations, the significant difference between last year's amounts and this year's. And some of that has to do with the fact of the bigger projects and us having those on the books and no longer having those large amounts outstanding. But it's much tighter. There's not a lot of wiggle room as far as all the checks and balances that we have between our appropriation and our estimated resources. So it's going to be a little trickier this year at times if emergencies arise. We'll have a better picture once hiring has settled and everybody has chosen what insurance, and we have a final end picture of like what that cost savings will be. So I'm keeping up to date with that, but we haven't really gone through that process on the insurance side yet. So, and obviously for us that's a big cost depending on what they choose or what they don't choose. So the next time for the forecast is in November, but that's where we're at right now. And then I think normally I have like that annual statement that is required every year. I get it from Red Tree. And it's just kind of an audit thing, and we have to submit it to the Ohio Auditor's Office. I don't have that yet, so it'll probably be on the August 6th in the reports. Ryan is on vacation, Mr. Nelson is on vacation from Red Tree, so I'm sure he had other things to do than send me that little paper, so.
We could probably, if we get in time, we could put it on the special meeting.
Yeah. I'm not sure when he's gonna be back for
Okay.
sure. It's not it doesn't have to be at a certain, as long as we do it that once a year, that will be okay if it's in August.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Stokely, please call the roll.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Goma?
Aye.
And your comments, Ms. Stokely,
I
please.
don't have many this evening, just, one real quick thing, and I'm sure Mr. Harris will get into this later, in the legislative, but, they are going to reconvene on July 21st to try to override a few of, Governor DeWine's vetoes. So it is really, really important to reach out to your representatives, your legislators, and let them know, that these are things that would really impact, public schools. There are three, items that would really impact, one being our ability to, have an emergency levy, replacement levy, one giving the county, budget, or the county auditors, county budget commission that, the ability to withhold or restrict or modify basically what voters have approved in each local school district, taking away local control from not only the school and the boards, but from the community members that made decisions on behalf of their schools.
Did you do the carryover, or the cap cash reserves?
No, that's not on it. I can tell you.
Hold on, I got it right here. I don't know why
You said levies, right?
Yes.
County budget commissions. To reduce levies, 20 mil floor.
20 mil floor.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
so, the inclusion of, which does not affect us, but it does affect a lot of districts and could potentially affect us in the future. Including emergency levies and things which are currently not included when calculating the 20 mil floor, in doing that. So they need a 3/5 vote in order to override his veto. I really don't remember the last time that they've done, that they've reconvened, obviously not recently, but I'm trying to think of the last budget cycle when they may have reconvened right after to try to override. I don't have any
I
recollection.
don't know if it was right after, wasn't it with the transgender, didn't he, I thought he voted at, something relative to that
Yeah, the bill, but
bill. Yeah.
So, it's just,
But you're right,
the outreach is very important. He has said he wants to put together a property tax reform group study, which I think everybody, agrees, everyone on all sides agrees that something needs to be done. It's just a question of what that is and how it affects, the differing, not only residents and taxpayers, but the entities that receive those taxes and what other avenues are, so.
There were some great ideas by some legislators, so they have them.
Thank you. Brings us to item G, Superintendent CEO's business. Dr. Salvo.
Thank you, Ms. Coco. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve all items listed in the superintendent's consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, this evening we have a few personnel items for your consideration relative to certified and classified staff, coaches. We have a couple resignation, and we have some transfers, and again, most of it are typical. I'll come back to some introductions here in a moment. We have some stipends for professional development. Those are regarding mostly our science program, however, there's some algebra in there, some KRA training, quantitative reasoning training for a math teacher at the high school. And then we have some adjustments to the administrator's handbook, some things, the things that we're looking to change are noted there. We have two service agreements, a proposal and an agreement out of our special education department. So Ms. Lehman, if you could explain those two?
Sure. The first one for KRG education is for Leap Green. We currently don't have any students there, but we were putting that contract on in case we had students that needed to have that need. Sometimes we have students that move into the district that may already be placed there, things like that. So we just kind of like to have the contracts on. Currently no one there at this point. The next one is Education Service Center of Northeast Ohio, and this is for the contract for the teacher visually impaired, as well as the orientation and mobility, so to provide services to our students with limited vision and mobility issues.
Can I ask a question? For the contract with LEAP, is that for all of the locations, like a general?
Green.
Just Green, okay, I missed that, thank you.
Yeah, we do different contracts with
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And then lastly, I wanted to introduce you to some potential new hires, should you agree to hire them this evening. First, we have Elise Nelson. Is it Elise?
Hi, I'm Elise.
Okay. Elise would be joining us as our newest member of the Price staff in her role as an intervention specialist. This will be Ms. Nelson's first year in education, as she completed her student teaching last spring in the Stowe schools. She earned her Bachelor of Science in Education from Kent State University with a major in special education with a concentration in mild to intensive. Amanda Herring.
Hello.
Amanda would be serving as a district-wide speech and language pathologist. We've hired, I know you have all paid attention, we've hired a few this year. She earned her Bachelor of Science in Speech Pathology and Audiology with a minor in Early Intervention from Kent State University and a Master of Science in Speech Language Pathology from Baldwin Walls University. And then the next two that are for your consideration this evening are not able to come, but David Miller, we're happy that we found a modern communications through media production teacher. I'll tell you in my, a little bit more when I get to my remarks, but I did visit the new school today and I saw that space, it's amazing. So he comes to us with experience from Ashtabula County Technical and Career Center, where he served as an interactive media teacher. So he has a number of years of experience, a Bachelor of Arts in Mass Media Production from the University of Akron, and a teaching certificate from Bowling Green. And then lastly, we have Katrina Johansson, which may be a familiar name to some of you, but she served as the long-term substitute in 4th grade at DeWitt this past year, and she was in for Ms. Sabaticki, and she will bring that 4th grade teaching experience to Silver Lake. This year, she earned a Bachelor of Science in Education with a major in Early Childhood and a minor in Mild to Moderate Education from Kent State University. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Any questions or comments? Mr. Boyd, please call the roll.
Sorry. Ms. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. Coca?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Thank you. So at least,
Welcome.
and yeah, if you would come forward, welcome. Amanda?
Just go right there.
Amanda, you'll be next. You're on deck.
Podium. You're good, it'll
Okay. Hi, I'm Elise Nelson. I just graduated from Kent State this past year. I'm so excited to be a part of the Cuyahoga Falls City School District. I grew up in Independence my whole life, so I've been very familiar with this area. I know it's a great city to be in, and as soon as I received the opportunity to sign on, I got so excited. I love the team. From the second I did my first interview with them, I was so excited, and I was like, I hope they take me. I hope Amanda takes me. So I was so excited to be a part of it, and I'm just so happy to be here. I'm ready for the school year.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, my name's Amanda meet all of you tonight. I've noticed a lot with the school district that everyone is a black tiger and stays a black tiger, which I love. I unfortunately am a bulldog. I went to Stowe, so don't hold that against me.
You're okay.
Good, I feel better. That aside, I am so excited to be part of the Black Tiger family. When I spoke with Ms. Seaman, I could tell that you guys have hired a lot of new speech paths in just within this coming school district or the school year, and I think that that's awesome. I'm so excited to be part of that team. I am fresh out of school, just got my master's literally 2 months ago, so I am very excited to take on this challenge. I've been in preschool all the way up to high school, so I feel very confident working all the way through, littles to the ones all the way up there. Aside from that, I'm very excited, so thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much and welcome, because now you're a black tiger and will always be a black tiger. You can stay a bulldog too, we'll let you. Or whatever.
It's like a dual citizenship.
Yeah, it's a dual. We'll let you apply for dual citizenship. Okay, that brings us to item H, Superintendent CEO's business.
Thank you, Ms. Coco. Just a couple things. One I did forget to mention in my remarks, we hired a new receptionist. She accepted, and we're excited for her to start. That's Fran Bishop. She has a lot of experience in schools and courts, but most recently Talmadge schools. So she was able to, we had a great candidate pool, and it was a difficult decision, but she certainly brings a lot of experience and was a delight. So we're happy to welcome her on board. So she'll
And
be
a black
starting
tiger.
I think she has a vacation. What's that?
And a former black tiger. She's
And a
great
former
to
black tiger. And her parents had a business for 46 years here, the florist. Her last, but it's her maiden name. Do you know, what is it? Her maiden name? It was the name of the florist.
Yeah. No.
No,
Um,
no.
now I don't
I'm
remember.
I'm not sure. But regardless, she has a lot of ties to the community. And so she'll be starting, she has a vacation plan, so after that, we'll get her started. I also just.
No belly.
What is it?
No belly.
That's what it is, Valley Forest, okay. Summer school concluded, thank you to Principal Brown, I got a chance to see them, I think it was your last day, maybe. So happy to see them, they were quite excited, I felt like a celebrity again, I haven't been around kids for a while, and they were quite excited to see me, which was nice. But I was happy to see them. And then, we've had our Black Tiger family, drive. That is in motion, so we are taking donations. We've had some generous donations from the Democratic Club and our foundation, and anyone else I'm missing? I know others are working on the drops, and when is our pickup date? You know off the top of your head?
August 12th is our actual stuff for the bus, but the drive goes the 28th through the 11th.
So we're excited to add to that, and just I know all the board feels the same way, just so happy of all the families we've been able to help. And we've had so many generous donors, personal and businesses, so very grateful to everyone. And lastly, I would just say that I visited the new campus today, and I'm flabbergasted because I haven't been there since before I went on vacation, and actually it's like so much progress, as we know, and there was so much progress, just beautiful. I was checking out the colors and the schemes, and some ones that I was a little skeptical about. I'm okay with some of them, some others are, but I was taking pictures of things I'm not so fond of, and I will be talking at our meeting tomorrow on Thursday, so Ms. White, I'll be fired up tomorrow at our meeting to share some of the feedback I have. Little things, but enough that they bug me, and I would like to know reasonings for some of the decisions. Some landscaping and some other molding, I don't know, didn't sit well with me, but nonetheless.
I have strong feelings about landscaping.
Do you? Yeah, I'll show you a picture of what I'm talking about. I'm sure you'll agree. But it is beautiful. The field, when I saw it for the first time, I was just in awe. It's gorgeous. I try to be partial, as I'm more of an athlete than I'm a musician for sure, so I was appreciative of that. But then when I saw the auditorium, very happy about that. The panels are going in, so that was cool. The sound acoustic. Acoustical panels, thank you. See, I'm the athlete. At least she did know what the goalposts were, so that was good. So it was. I do have some questions about that, though. I want to see. I don't remember that being the color choice, so just some things that I want to check in on. But It's beautiful, the colors, they have signs up now for all the doors are in, they're putting in some more glass, but the exterior doors and glass are coming together, and I know this will not be a surprise, but it was so much of a difference that I had no idea where the heck, I couldn't believe that these, you know, where these rooms were situated, because I've been in there several times, but now that they're really there, I'm like, oh, that's where the home ec room is? Oh, that's where such a, so, well,
It's really
family
not that
can
hard to
serve
get
science.
around in there.
Oh, I had no clue. And I've been in it 10 times, but I had Aaron. But I believe it or not, I recognized a little, like, the little ramp, and I knew where it led, so I did get a couple places.
To the Performing Arts Center.
Yes, very good.
Yeah.
I knew that.
Find
Because it's
landmarks.
not, don't let our superintendent scare you, because it
Yeah.
really is not that hard to get around in the new building.
Yeah, well,
It makes sense when you're in it.
I got the middle school, that's easy, 6, 7, 8. It's when I get into the joint. But regardless, it was beautiful, I'm very pleased, it's coming along, like I said, quite well. But there are a couple things that I will be following up. You also will have a large change order coming your way, and that I'm not happy about, and that we might need to put on the July 23rd. I'll have a report for you on that and with more details. Mr. Magatti will provide you with details on that as well. So that's.
Do you want to let us know what it's relating to so we can start doing our research as you
It
know
is,
we will?
Mr. Hutch can tell you because he's been
Yeah.
working on it.
So we had specified that data and power be at desk height.
Oh, so this is about the,
You read about it.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
This is the summation of the cost of the fixed staff.
we just got the bi-weekly report yesterday,
It's in
so.
there.
So I'm sitting down with Lyle from TDA tomorrow, pretty much all day. And we're going room by room to make sure what they're proposing is what's needed. Is there a cheaper way to try to drive the cost of that change order down?
Okay.
I don't see there's any way that it won't be a change order large enough to hit your level of approval.
So, yeah, that's the bad news. But the good news is, honestly, I know I'm joking around a lot, but it truly is, I'm so excited, and it's coming together so beautifully, and I would encourage you to, to drive, if anyone wants a tour, I'm sure we might be able to arrange that. There weren't that many workers on site. I mean, I was surprised. I mean, they're there, of course, but it wasn't like the real construction zone I'm used to.
There's less than 178 per the
Yeah.
report.
Would we be
Good,
able
very good.
to, by any chance, do just a real quick peek in, if we're there for,
That
Oh, yeah.
is,
Mhm.
I can reach out to Jim Beelman, because I think either he or Lucas will be there, and I don't know if they actually lock things there now or what, but I'm sure
I bet we could.
we could.
When
I
they
was thinking
were
if
there
we
for
were
the
there,
photo.
if we were there for the photo anyways,
Yeah.
we could just take,
Yep.
just real quick,
I'm sure we can
real
make that
quick
work.
peek.
And then
Yeah.
when the roar hits, I've been waiting for mine. It hasn't come yet. I know. I'm sure it's bothering you more than it's bothering me. But we do have that date for the grand opening. It's December 6th. Time to be
Yes.
announced.
That's right.
And you need to get them that date because it was in the notes that they need that date for the plaque, FYI.
I think I gave it to them the
Okay,
last
it was
meeting.
in the notes that they're waiting for that date from
Oh, no, you're right. I think it was tentative, so yeah.
you. Yeah,
right, I'll
so
shoot them
they
that.
need
Thank you.
that date, Dr.
I'll make a
Salko.
note.
I reminded myself to remind you of that.
Thank you.
That they're waiting
Yeah,
for
they
you.
went back and forth.
I was
on
like,
that
oh wait,
plaque.
no, we have that, so we should send that over to them. So they can make that plaque that they wanna make.
I will make note. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to board business. Number one is a resolution. It is recommended that the Board of Education approves the resolution authorizing one person to possess a deadly weapon on board property or a school safety zone.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Second?
Dr. Salko, did you wanna say
I
something?
mean, that language is rather strong, and it might grab the attention of folks. Essentially, what we would like to do is name one person who is extensively trained in law enforcement, thorough background, to be able to carry a weapon on property. And what it does is it allows us to have just one more responder in the event that there would be an emergency or a need for it. I want to be very clear, this is not about having multiple people or any staff members. Some districts do open it up to staff members. That is not what we are interested in doing. This is, as I mentioned, a highly trained, numerous years in law enforcement, and has been authorized to use a gun for decades, so. And I don't know, Mr. Hutch, if you want to add anything?
Just a couple other clarifiers.
Yep.
It would be concealed, so it wouldn't be an open carry situation. And we have, our resolution goes far beyond the Ohio standard for authorization. So we've added additional requirements beyond what House Bill 99 would say are the requirements. So we've made those requirements more stringent and rigid for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Hedge. Any more comments or discussion on this?
Yeah, I would just add, because this relates to school safety, this is something that the board can and did discuss in executive session. So we spent a lot of time discussing this. I won't go into discussions that we had, but we have that right under the law to have those so that we weren't revealing the identity of the person. But we spent a lot of time and got us to this place with this very specific resolution that, as Mr. Hutch added, goes well beyond what the law requires, and also with the language that it's one person that we all as a board thought was important. We don't want folks in the community thinking that there could be so many random people in our buildings with guns that aren't police, because obviously we already do have guns in our schools with our trained officers that we welcome in our schools every day, not just as our school resource officers, but just anytime I stop by schools, there's police sitting in the driveways of our buildings, or I've visited buildings and there's just police officers there visiting because they're encouraged to do that. And this just adds someone that has is highly trained, as the full resolution says, and meets the muster, in my opinion, to be able to do this. And that's what makes me comfortable and confident in this.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Anyone else? Great. Ms. Stokely, please call the roll.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
That brings us to item 2, is resolution declaring it necessary to renew an existing levy. Recommended resolution declaring it necessary to renew an existing 9.97 mil tax levy for the purpose of current expenses, and requesting the Summit County Fiscal Officer to make certain certifications pursuant to sections 5705.03 and 5705.21 of the revised code.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion?
This is just the first step in putting the 9.97 mil levy on in November for continuing time. The last one in our little group that we were hoping to get out of the cycle with. So then I will submit this resolution to the county auditor, and then they'll give back to me with that information. And then on the 23rd meeting, we will have the second resolution, so that I can get it to the Board of Elections by the beginning of August when it is due.
Thank you.
Thank you for looking into the replacement option, but because folks would lose their 12.5% rollback, when you look at the amount of additional revenue we would gain from that replacement with the amount of additional taxes people would pay, the kind of hit that folks would take compared to what we actually gain would make it very difficult when we need to go for new money, because people would be paying so much more and we really wouldn't be getting that much more comparatively. So I think this is a prudent decision.
Had that not been a factor in there, I do think it would have been a good idea to do. It was one I had not thought, so thank you, Mr. Gomez.
I do think, however, we need to be thoughtful going forward, because we have this that we're putting on for this year, 2025. We'll have a renewal in 2027. Well, we'll see, because if it gets overridden, that won't really be a renewal anymore for the emergency level. And then 2029, we have the renewal of the 10-year 4 mills. So we know that we do need to go for new money, and that leaves us with only 2 options. Next year, or 2028. 2028 is probably too late. So we need to be honest about the fact that we need to push really hard for to get this passed this year, because the reality is we're probably gonna have to ask for new money next year, because with everything we've already done in terms of cuts, including closing a school, cutting budgets by 10%, we're still only gonna end up next year with $1 million in the bank. So I absolutely support this, but I also think we need to be realistic about where this still puts us at.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez, and thank you for the solution and trying to think outside the box to bring in more revenue for the district. You know, unfortunately, as you stated, and as Ms. Stokely discussed, that wasn't an option for us, but I appreciate that.
This will, if it passes just like the one before, we'll lock in that state reimbursement for taxpayers, so you would not have to worry about that. If this passes as is, they would continue to pay that for the duration, and it would never be up for approval on whether it would, fail or pass again. So it would lock that in just like the other one.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Stokely, please call the roll.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Would it be possible to have a statement of facts ready by July 23rd, or do you need till August 6th?
I will be here July.
Yeah, so do you need till August 6th for that? I just think it'd be good to have that board approved as soon as possible.
Yes, I think I should be able to.
Okay.
The 6th, yeah. 'cause
Thank
it's-
you.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, that brings us to item 3, school lunch prices. It is recommended that the Board of Education approves the school lunch prices for the 2025-2026 school year. That would be increasing the elementary school breakfast 20 cents, and the elementary school lunch by 20 cents. The middle school and high school breakfast would increase 20 cents, and the middle school and high school,
Just the middle school would increase.
I'm sorry, middle school would be 35 cents then on lunch.
So moved.
So there's a motion.
Second.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Discussion?
Yeah, I have comments. Well, I appreciate the fact that we have low meal rates. I think that's a good thing. But my issue is, if we raise these prices by this much, somebody that eats breakfast and lunch at the elementary school every day of the week, it's $2 more a week. At middle school, because we'd be raising middle school to match high school, it's $2.75 a week. And I appreciate, because I asked administration, is there any way to know like how many people buy every day of the week? And we don't really have a way to pull that data, but I appreciate the fact that they tried nonetheless, so I really do appreciate that. So I can only just go off of what would that worst case scenario for a family be. And then on the other side of that is how much money does this really produce for the district? And based on last year's numbers, it only really gives us $32,000 more. And so we don't really have a way of knowing what potential hardship it could create for families, because we don't have a way, and that's because our system can't do it, and that's not anyone's fault, but there's no way for knowing how much more this is going to financially impact our families. But we also know it doesn't really put much of a dent at all in the food service budget, because we're looking at being down $320,000. This is $32,000, that's 10%, which in business world is like a rounding error. So I feel like this puts a hardship potentially on families, but it doesn't really help our budget that much. So for that reason, I won't be supporting this evening.
Comments, Ms. Schaefer, Mr. Harris, thoughts?
I mean, I understand understand, I understand where Mr. Gomez is coming from, but, I mean, I'm personally, okay with these increases myself, so.
What would be the procedure if someone, if the price has changed and it did create a financial hardship? What would be the procedure on,
Mr.
like
Allen,
the
you wanna
family
address
would, how does that, where do we land on our procedure on that? People that couldn't pay their lunches.
So currently, we have our individuals who may extend their lunch balance, and we start with a phone call to reach out to see. Typically, our social workers are working with families on, the alternatives, food banks and things like that. If there needs to be something more in terms of going back and resubmitting their application for free or reduced lunch, we're working with families at doing that. Sometimes that's just about the simplest thing to do, is go to the free and reduced lunch application. We're trying to encourage, anybody who's close to do that, because if we start and that happens by October, once the rollover happens, they're approved and we know it, and so then we can reduce the likelihood of having to deal with that meal hardship. None of our students go without food, so we are ensuring that they get something to eat, whether it be a breakfast or lunch.
If this were to pass, oh, I'm sorry, did I cut someone off?
I was just going to say, like, and I would add to that, that I think in our policy, the treasurer has the ability to, under certain circumstances, I know our social workers will work with families, and if they can produce reasons for a hardship, we make exceptions and would allow for that.
And we'll work with the families to get that information to present to the treasurer, but that's not the first option.
If this were to pass, and would there be a way to, excuse me, be able to put it out to the community, hey, the prices have changed, if this creates a hardship, can you please call, whoever, the treasurer's office or the,
So, in the handbooks that we approved months back, in the past, the actual prices have been embedded within the student handbook. As of right now, it is simply just a link to the nutrition site. When we start to re-up our new information and final forms for next school year, starting in August, there's going to be, every family has to go through that process of identifying, either they want to do the application for free or reduced lunch, or they do not. At that point, there will be an indicator of the change in the lunch prices. So as soon as this is approved, we can start, making that communication.
do we have the ability on final forms to note that there is a price increase?
Correct.
And that, someone that they could contact, and then also maybe just say, fill out, click yes to fill out the form, and then contact the office, something, because I know that maybe it won't be noticed in the handbook. Sometimes you have, the beginning of the school year is a very busy time, and it could be missed, and could we make it more,
Like highlighted, yeah.
more highlighted, thank you.
We also plan on multiple communications as well, and we know that building principals will be putting out information in a variety of different fashions, so we're not just going to look at the final forms for that reason. So, we'll work with the principals on ensuring that, the messages that go out, if you're doing any type of orientations, every opportunity that we can, that, communicate with parents what the lunch prices will be and what they look like.
And that can go in my back-to-school newsletter that I send out to families at the beginning of August.
And maybe highlight the importance of filling out that form for the free and reduced lunch. Because $2 might not seem, what was it, $2.40? What did you say, Mr. Gomez?
$2 at elementary if you're buying both meals every day.
$2 might not seem like a lot a week, but if you have like 4 kids in the school, I mean, that does over the month add up. So it could be a significant change for someone that is in between being able to qualify for a free or reduced lunch and someone that doesn't qualify.
Thank you, Ms. Schaefer. Wonderful suggestions. And also, if someone is applying for free and reduced lunch and they make too much money, they're on the lower end of, they make too much money, but they don't make a lot of money. I don't know how else to say that. They get a notification that they don't qualify, correct? Is that from us, or is that an automated?
So the free and reduced lunch is a site that they go to. The nutrition services department has to enter some information, maybe get some information from student services as well, and they'll get that from that particular site. So it's not.
Okay,
it's
so
not our
that's not
decision.
something that we
Yeah,
can
it's not-
tailor
It's not a school
that
district
says,
decision
okay.
at who gets free and reduced lunch. However, for those individuals who are at that cusp, we still can talk about the other alternatives, including, presenting that to the treasurer for consideration for waiving lunch fee or something to that effect, or fees, period.
That would just be my concern. I wasn't comfortable with the numbers that were presented before, which were higher than this for the increases. But that still is my concern, is for those families that make just over, but don't make a lot. Those are the
We do
families that are
know
most
that,
affected.
Over the last couple of years, we have a list of individuals that, the lunch prices, it's maybe it's something I forgot, or it is maybe a hardship. And so we've addressed a lot, we spent a lot of time with our families going through, trying to address, their individual situations, to try to help provide as much support as possible, which is another reason to plug in for the donations to the Black Tiger Family Center.
I think it makes sense to make the middle school and the high school prices be the same because they're receiving the same lunch. So it just, and I think was that your suggestion, Mr. Gomez, bringing the prices up to the middle school up to the high school prices, because they'll be receiving the same product.
So, I guess my question is, what is the reason to support the increase in the prices?
I'm supporting these numbers are a lot better than what they were. I don't have, and bring the past numbers with me though.
I didn't
I
bring
can't
it.
tell you what those are.
And I understand what you're saying about the increase creating hardship on families, but we're not getting, as a big entity, a big return on that number. It's not solving problems in food service that would make a large increase in income.
And then I hear, but if I support the increase, we'll try to help those families that need help, which would probably be more families because we're increasing it. So I guess
We'd
what
make that up.
what is the
Yeah.
what is the impetus for supporting an increase? I guess I haven't heard someone advocate for increasing the prices.
Well, I think if you go to the grocery store, prices are up. And maybe that's why he's trying to increase the prices, because we all know every time I go to the grocery store, and the prices are very high.
And
They're
I couldn't
going up.
remember, I couldn't remember if that's what Bill, if he had mentioned.
I don't know for sure.
The increase, yeah.
I'm just offering that might be a reason.
Right.
I mean, our costs have gone up just
Of course,
due to,
yeah.
when supply chain issues were happening, and, they've just continued to stay at that level, obviously, over, since the pandemic. We also received, more money during the pandemic
Yeah.
and reimbursements
Yeah.
that we are also no longer receiving. So both of those two things combined, are, causing some of this decrease in their fund balance.
I would say that our food costs, in general, just by gauging, going to the grocery store or anywhere else, has probably increased well over what we're increasing the prices. So this is putting a little bit of a cushion on that, but I don't think it's definitely, these increases are not nearly enough to cover all of the.
I'm sorry, excuse me. And one of the big expenditures that he shared with me is equipment. So he's had to replace a lot of equipment, which is very expensive. So, and I know that he shared this the last time with his, you know, how he has lost, what, hundreds of thousands of dollars, if I'm not mistaken, over the last couple of years. And so he's probably quite nervous about that, because what we're trying to do is not have to tap into general fund. Because right now, we're self-sufficient in that department, but, and I don't want to speak for the treasurer, but I think that's what I heard. And the concern is,
And what do you think the difference is that we've been doing, what, like, being able to be a self-contained unit and having the funds to, you know, pay for the food and then the equipment and the benefits? And then now with the prices and food, is it the price of the food going up? That's, now, it's not just affecting our food costs, it's up, we're not able to pay the labor costs and the equipment costs and things of that nature.
Yeah. I mean, there are multiple, obviously, you know, we're in negotiated agreements on the labor costs for things. Our insurance costs are up, those are charged there. But food, you know, again, like I said, we received more revenue during the pandemic, and pre-pandemic, the food prices were much lower, you know, what we were purchasing. Now they're, you know, they're up there, just like you see at the grocery store, they're also up there. For us, which has had significant, you know, it's the timing of both of those issues hitting at the same time of, we're kind of losing, we had a cushion from the COVID reimbursements, you know,
Oh, you
where
think the
everybody.
COVID reimbursements made a difference?
Yes,
in-
it was
okay.
everybody, we were getting reimbursed for everybody at that point in
Yeah.
time. And now
Oh,
we're back
yes.
to pay, you know, so we were getting more in reimbursements then, just due to the nature of how it was, you know, how it went during the pandemic. And now we've gone back to, you know, free and reduced and having to fill out the application in order to get it before, you know, everybody was just universally getting it and getting the reimbursement for it without really having to do anything. So, I know even in previous districts, that's always a struggle too, as Mr. Elder, you know, referred to, of just getting people to fill out the application. You know, of just doing it, and it's always been a push in any other district I've been in to have people fill it out no matter what, and just see, because it helps them, it helps us, but it's an issue everywhere, just getting people to fill out the form, whereas during the pandemic, you didn't have to fill out anything.
Okay.
And we got the reimbursement, and so, now there's, you know, a little more, self-starter work, you know, and more of us trying to get people to do it and communicating that, and even so, a lot of times it still doesn't result in, you know, big difference in what we already have. You may get a few, which is always helpful, but, I've not seen anyone with like a real successful plan for that over my time where they've like gotten everybody to do it.
I am, yeah, I'm comfortable with the increases here personally, and I'm also confident in our student services and thankful for everything that they've worked towards, knowing that we do have the supports in place for families that may have a hardship, that they have the avenues and communicated for them to be able to be taken care of, because as a district, we want every student to, and I know they're eating, I know that every student is eating no matter what. We know that, and we've established that, but we want our families and our students to be taken care of, and I'm confident that we have support in place for them. So. Ms. Stokely, please call the roll.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Nay.
Right. That brings us to item 4, future agenda items.
Ms. Coco, I don't have any comments or anything, so I'm gonna log off now.
Thank you very much,
Take
Ms.
care of
White, for
yourself.
joining
Take care,
us
Ms.
this
White.
I
evening.
will.
We
Thank
hope you feel
you.
better.
Bye-bye.
Have a good evening.
Two.
You too. Right. Future agenda items, we know Ms. Stokoe will have for us the appropriations and a statement of facts for us as well on August 6th. Our special meeting on the 23rd will be the levy, and then if there's any additional staff, that may be on July 3rd, our special meeting.
July 23rd, maybe?
23rd, yes.
We get the change order info on that too? Was that right?
Yes, so, and I was going to ask in your report this week, but if, for that, I know we just wanted it to be the levy, and again, my apologies for having to insert the change order, as we know, that can hold things up, as well as our insurance carrier just came through. Utica had us at bay, and now our folks have worked it where they will approve us, so that's probably a little time sensitive. And then if we have staffing, that would be appreciated, but if the board just desires not to do that, to keep it.
If we're here, we might as well work.
Okay,
Right.
I just want to be
Yeah,
respectful of
agreed.
our,
So anything
Yes.
that's time sensitive, you know.
I mean, it's appreciated, like, again, staff, I think for the folks that are resigning and getting new positions, especially if they're leaving for another district, they'd probably appreciate
They'll
being
take care of it.
approved sooner rather than
Yeah.
in August.
And then on August 6th, would we be having discussions on Preston and Price then?
Like, what specifically are you thinking?
Well, because you'd have more time to look into some of the numbers.
We
so
could, I
that
wasn't sure
We can be
what,
more prepared when we go to have, like our meetings in the community as well. Kind of want to be prepared for what we'll be presenting to them as well. So we'd want to hone in on that piece as well and kind of have something a little bit more.
yeah, if you, I mean, you guys, you know, you're the bosses, so if you need that information by that date, we'll make it happen. I speak for Margie, I know she's under a lot of pressure getting prepared for the new year, so, you know, the more time I can give her, the better. August 6th seems to be probably reasonable, I hate to speak for her, but knowing that it's 2, perhaps she can, and she's got a good start, so it's not like she's starting from ground zero, so, Mr. Bagatti, you can mention maybe to Ms. Johnson that you want her to start working on those 2 buildings.
We
We
will
wouldn't-
tell us more about like that the students will work, you know, that-
More grade levels.
yeah, I mean, I think that's important as well.
Okay.
And then
We
we
just have
can,
that on as a discussion item
yeah,
or a presentation.
I think a discussion, and then we would want to also make sure we're like preparing for what are we presenting when we go out into each school before we just open it up for to receive
Yes.
feedback, you know. Obviously, we want to have something prepared to kind of explain to the community how we arrived at these 2 possibilities and kind of show them what that looks like. And then also, hopefully, we can have something that shows like the impacts as well, speaking to what you had said, because then that will help folks understand like what gets impacted. So if they're getting impacted, you know, more so than they might want to come to the Price one or the Preston one, so that'll help as well. So then I think as we're honing in, then we can kind of have those conversations and then kind of be prepared when we have those meetings in their neighborhoods.
Okay.
And would those meetings occur before or after the school year starts? I'm sorry.
I think we said late August, so that school would have
After
started,
school
yeah.
starts. It's hard, and not to be dramatic, but this is someone's first day at that school, so it's stressful.
Yeah, I didn't think of it that way.
For the people that are
Yeah.
going to, you know, the people, for everyone.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to committee reports. We had a Foundation and Alumni Association meeting last night. It's summer, it's downtime, not a lot going on. Just wanted to mention that we now have another possible board member that joined last night for the first time. And it's encouraging to see, I'm saying this like I'm old. I feel old, but an even younger than me generation of alumni that are starting to form and be interested in being a part of the foundation and bringing others along with them. So it's encouraging.
It is encouraging.
And of course,
And a fresh perspective
Yeah.
always is nice
It
to
is.
have some.
It's good and very encouraging because we need
That's
it.
great.
So that's all for that. And then Mr. Harris, do you have any legislative?
Yeah, just, Ms. Dwight covered a lot of it, but, again, last Monday, Governor DeWine signed the budget with 67 line item vetoes there. We went over the ones that were related to education. Again, as Ms. Stoikoi said, Speaker Huffman called the House back on the 21st, so we'll keep an eye on that and see what happens. And then also a little fun fact about that, the House chamber is getting new air conditioning at the moment, so they're going to be in the Senate chamber, 33 seats for 99 folks, so that's going to be interesting.
Is it buddy system?
Right, yeah, that's a buddy up, right?
Sounds like somebody didn't do a capacity.
Right, exactly, right?
Is that gonna be a,
No, but it'll
be a
be
fire
fun
hazard.
seeing them figure that out. What's that?
you have to call the fire department for a fire hazard above capacity?
Yeah, they're
And
above
they won't
capacity.
have enough buttons to push.
What's that?
Because
I don't know how they're going
they
to.
don't do roll call votes in the House, they
Mhm.
do the button push.
I have no idea how they're going to do it.
It's gonna be
It's gonna be
painful.
magic.
Yeah, we'll see.
Magic.
We'll see.
Sorry.
But no, that's all I have.
We have
Thanks, Ms.
something for
Stoikoi.
board policy. We need to set a meeting, and we've been slack
We
on
talked
that.
about it today,
Yeah.
actually, and
So
you
just
didn't get an
wanna-
email from Chris today.
I don't
If
know.
not, it's coming, 'cause we
Okay.
talked about it today.
Cause then, yeah, we need to get these ones done, cause then
Yes.
we'll get all the budget ones and those.
We have a
will-
whole list, we went over it
Well,
today.
the budget
Yeah.
ones will probably be
Yeah.
quite large, so just wanted to
Yes.
mention that again.
Great. That brings us to comments, Mr. Schaefer.
I don't really have anything.
Great. Brings it to me. I don't have any comments tonight either, other than I truly, truly do appreciate the engagement of this community. In whether there's things that they necessarily agree with or disagree with, or concerns or excitement, the level of engagement that this community has with our district is just, sometimes I'm awestruck by it, and I'm appreciative of that, and glad that we have the community we have. So, Mr. Gomez.
Yeah, I just wanna say, I'm really proud of our new strategic plan that we adopted and our three focus areas. Culture of caring, facilitating our future, and the steering to student achievement. I just am disappointed that we no longer read our focus areas on our agenda, and I think that we should return to that. I was told that that was a decision made by board members at the retreat that they held, and I think it's unfortunate.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Mr. Harris.
I was going to mention exactly what you did, Ms. Coco. Very appreciative of the community coming out, also of administration for getting us everything we need to help make this decision, so thank you all so much.
Yes.
That brings us to item J, executive session. Pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22, G1, and Section 121.22, G2, it is hereby moved that the board adjourn to executive session to consider the employment of a public employee or official, and to consider the purchase of property for public purposes, the sale of property at competitive bidding, or the sale or other disposition of unneeded, obsolete, or unfit for use property.
Second.
Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Thank you. Entering into executive session at 7:55. There will be no action after.